Okay, so we're having the next installment of the PowerPoint with art that one needs for Quizbowl, and we're going to be going over numbers 91 through 105. But I wanted to include, before we get started on that set, of a person and artwork that is not included in the PowerPoint, and that is Gustav Klimt. What you need to know for him is that he is a member of the Vienna secession movement. He's going to be in the early part of the 20th century, last part of the 19th century, and his most famous work is one that a lot of his works are noted for, which is going to include Gold Leaf, and that is his work known as The Kiss. You can see it right there, and you can see the gold leaf that he works with. If you put him into QB Reader, there you can see, name this founder of the Vienna secession, Gold Leaf Kiss. So just something to obviously try and make sure that it does not go dead. So there is his work. You can see the gold leaf that is there, and that is Gustav Klimt. His other works that, of course, you could note, portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer and Danae as well. But there it is. So let's go ahead and get started to the PowerPoint with the first one. It's not quite the exact same order as what you have on the sheet, but it's the Ashcan School, which features, as you see, their daily life in New York City. You can see the names that are there, but more importantly, just associate the Ashcan School with New York City, both photography and artwork, paintings that show some of the poor elements. In addition to these people, Robert Henri, George Lux, William Glackens, John Sloan, Everett Shinn, you also have, and we can go back and see it here, George Bellows right here, who is associated with the Ashcan School as well. But particularly, as you can see, Cliff Dweller showing the tenement housing of Los Angeles, or it's not of Los Angeles, New York, but it's in Los Angeles Museum. And then, of course, his famous Dempsey and Firpo showing an incredibly famous fight that occurred in the 1920s. As you can see, it was painted in 1924. But at any rate, George Bellows is a part of the Ashcan School. So we go back and continue on. You also need to know, as an art movement, the other part of the 20th century, Futurism. It was an Italian art movement founded in 1909 by Marinetti, but its most famous proponent is probably going to be Umberto Boccioni. And Boccioni is the only person that I could name associated with Futurism. And his most famous work, and we go back and look at it again because it's not in my PowerPoint. Go ahead and get rid of Bellows, get rid of Klimt, is going to be the work that you see here, Unique Forms of Continuity in Space. So part of that movement is he. So all of this is Boccioni that you can see here as I scroll on his Wikipedia page. He's revolutionary in the Futurism movement, as you can see, artistic social movement originated in Italy. But you can look up more of it on your own time. In the interest of keeping these things short, we will move on to the next thing, which is Paul Klee, Twittering machine. In order that the question doesn't go dead, that's all you really need to know. And so you can see it there. You can go and look up, especially by using QB Reader, more stuff on Paul Klee to get an idea if you're making a card for him or whatnot of what comes up. But as long as you know Twittering machine, he will not necessarily go dead. So the next person that we have is going to be Piet Mondrian. And he is associated with a movement called De Stijl. And I didn't look it up earlier, so I'm not necessarily as prepared, but we'll go ahead and look it up now. Mondrian, and Dutch painter. And there it is. He's a major contributor to the De Stijl art movement, which is just merely, as you can see here, the style, as it were. But that comes up somewhat in Quizbowl as well. So you should be, just quickly take a look at the entry right here of De Stijl. But Mondrian is perhaps the most famous person associated with it. And his major works that you can see that are in the PowerPoint are going to be composition with yellow, blue, and red, which you can see these black lines that are separating, creating various rectangles and squares and the like, and Broadway Boogie Woogie, which of course is kind of evocative of the New York streets and the various traffic patterns and lights and whatnot. So Piet Mondrian, a part of the De Stijl movement, and here you can see Broadway Boogie Woogie, Piet Mondrian. go QBR him and see what else comes up over and over for the toss-ups. The next guy we have is Grant Wood, American Gothic, which shows a dentist, and I'm pretty sure his daughter that is there, but I would argue one of the most asked about paintings in all of Quizbowl. You can find this painting in the Art Museum in Chicago, the Art Institute of Chicago. He comes up quite a bit, and if you want to power him, you need to know a little bit more about him than just American Gothic necessarily. And so if we take a look at some of the items that one would need to know for him, Grant Wood, as you have The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, Daughters of the Revolution, Parson Weems' Fable, showing, of course, George Washington, and the cherry tree that you have right here, Sentimental Ballad, and January. But I would say after American Gothic, probably Parson Weems' Fable, Daughters of the Revolution. Knowing those will definitely, more often than not, get you to the answer before your opponent that you are currently playing against. But the Grant Wood, American Gothic. The next is going to be Frederick Remington. He is the artist of Western scenes, and that is his most famous work, a sculpture, Bronco Buster, which, of course, is self-explanatory. So Frederick Remington, no, he's associated with the American West, and he is the, of course, artist of Bronco Buster. Now we move on to another movement of art in the early part of the 20th century, and that is abstract expressionism. And this is the leading proponent, Jackson Pollock, who often in his questions in Quizbowl, it helps to know that you had a lover named Lee Krasner. So make sure you go QB Reader and look up Lee Krasner. Not Lee Krasner, but all the questions, many of them will mention it, that he was associated with. And as you can see, his style of painting, he called it action painting. And by the way, he just slinged the paint onto the canvas below him. He gained the nickname Jack the Dripper, but that is Jackson Pollock. I think he was from Idaho. I could be wrong about that. But there are some of his works. The most famous of his works is titled Lavender Mist. I'll be honest, I don't know if any of these that are actually here, maybe the one on the left is Lavender Mist. I don't know. I have opinions about Pollock and his work, but I will withhold them. He, however, is important to know, and so therefore know Jackson Pollock, Jack the Dripper, abstract expressionist, and lover of Lee Krasner. We move on to Georgia O'Keeffe. Georgia O'Keeffe, again, go and just quickly Wikipedia her and look at some of her works. But there you can see she is famous for painting the American Southwest, lots of flowers, lots of animal skulls, and she was married, I'm almost positive, to a famous photographer named Stieglitz, who comes up in Quizbowl, but we're going to make sure by looking her up really quickly. Georgia O'Keeffe, and there she is coming up, and I want to make sure that I'm right on that. Yep, there it is. She was married to Alfred Stieglitz, who should come up a little bit later, but as you can see, some of her works that are on her Wikipedia page, as I said, the lots of flowers, American Southwest, not completely that. And she's very much associated, as I said, American Southwest with New Mexico. But skull and desert motifs, lots and lots of stuff like that. Flowers, skulls, desert, and New Mexico. But was indeed married to Alfred Stieglitz, that you can see there, who was, of course, a photographer. But I think he comes up later. I'm almost positive that he comes up later in my list of guys to know. So there it is, Georgia O'Keeffe. Please know that stuff for her. The next one is Salvador Dali. He is a surrealist artist, surrealism being a movement, again, in the early part of the 20th century. One of really only two surrealist artists that you need to know in Quizbowl. The others, I think, immediately following him. But nevertheless, as you can see, kind of a wild character. And that is the singular most famous work for Salvador Dali. I think he has another painting of Giraffe that comes up in Quizbowl questions, but you could always QB Reader it and make a card for him indicating what comes up, what you need to know. But here you can see it very often talks about for this painting, cliffs in the background, and of course ants on a stopwatch down in the far corner here. Some kind of an animal. I do not know what it is, but he's got these whiskers that are here. But then, of course, the melting clocks all over the place. but it's called The Persistence of Memory, and probably, I would say, one of the top 10 most asked about paintings in all of Quizbowl. Salvador Dali, a surrealist author or artist. The other artist that is a surrealist that comes up quite a bit is Rene Magritte. And I think the work on the left, Time Transfixed, is perhaps the most famous work that comes up for him most often in Quizbowl. It shows a locomotive coming out of a fireplace of sorts with a clock right above it. He also is famous for the Son of Man on the right, which a man in a bowler hat has a green apple obscuring his face. This painting is particularly at the heart of the plot of a movie that was a remake of a previous movie called The Thomas Crown Affair. So that's some clue that might necessarily get you to beat him to the jump. But Rene Magritte, also to get Magritte correct, he's a Belgian artist, and I think I already have him pulled up. There he is. But you also have to know the treachery of images that you can see as a Magritte painting that merely has a pipe. And then down here in French, it says, "This is not a pipe." And so that is the treachery of images that often comes up for Magritte. Of course, we already looked at Son of Man. The Human Condition, we did not, but you can see a floating hat on the outside of a window that is there with a easel without the part missing, but it is the easel, is a part that like is painted to where it looks like you're looking out the window. So that would be, of course, the Human Condition. And then the other one that comes up quite a bit would be Golconda. And you can see Golconda there with all the floating fellows all over the place in the background of the building. But at any rate, so that is Rene Magritte, Belgian surrealist artist that comes up in Quizbowl quite a bit. But these are the ones that keep you from going dead. They would actually toss this up. The other ones would probably be clues with Magritte himself as the answer line. So we move on to Andrew Wyeth, and this is Christina's World, which shows a girl in the foreground. She is on the ground looking off at a distant farmhouse and barn, presumably. This actually was his neighbor, the artist Wyeth's neighbor. I think her name was Holga, and she has polio, which is the reason why. But Christina's World comes up quite a bit. But let's go ahead and look up Wyeth to make sure that we have other things that might come up for him. Wyeth, and there it is. We don't want that. We want Andrew Wyeth. Andrew Wyeth. There we go. An American painter, as you can see. He's been dead for the last 15 years or so. But you can see Christina's World, by far the most famous painting of his and notable work. That's what's listed. But at any rate, you can read about it. Woman in the painting is Anna Christian Olsen. But I thought Holga was a name associated with him, so I'm going to look at that really quickly. And I'm wrong in that. I don't know why I thought that, but it indeed was his neighbor. And I'm almost positive that there she is. She was firmly against using a wheelchair, so she would crawl everywhere. There it is. And it wasn't polio. It was a degenerative muscular disorder. I've got all kinds of things wrong in this recording. I apologize. But nevertheless, it comes up a lot. That's Christina's World by Andrew Wyeth. So there it is. Make sure that you commit it to memory. So we move on to M.C. Escher, who, of course, has the staircases in the work known as Relativity. You also have another work that is famous by him, in which one hand seems to be sketching another hand, but both seem as though they are sketched. But this is probably his most famous, M.C. Escher. You can look him up. He has lots of other paintings kind of like this, in which it's almost an infinite loop when you look at the painting, in the same way with the hands, that one paints the other or sketches the other, you would like. Nevertheless, we move on to Frederick August Bartholdi. And so he is the guy that put the outer copper skin on the Statue of Liberty. The interior of it, actually, and you can see the interior ironwork, that was not Bartholdi's work, but that was actually designed by Eiffel of Eiffel's Tower fame. And so the two men most responsible, and of course as a gift to the United States from the French, is going to be obviously Eiffel, Gustave Eiffel, and Frederick Bartholdi, which of course is responsible for the outer skin. And of course, to talk about the Statue of Liberty really quickly, make sure that you're familiar with the poem by Emma Lazarus, at the base of it, which is called the New Colossus. And in the poem, it claims, "Give me your hungry, your downtrodden, essentially your immigrants, the destitute of the world. We want to welcome him in as it makes our country stronger." But at any rate, Emma Lazarus, the New Colossus, Statue of Liberty, and Bartholdi. And this is what we're going to end on, because it brings us to, in my list of artists and works from the PowerPoint, Gutzon Borglum, who was not responsible for the completion of either of these works, but was, I think, the singular name attached to them both. Borglum, unfortunately, had quite a bit of ties with the Ku Klux Klan, especially the KKK in Indiana. And there's a whole crazy story about how the KKK in Indiana had such a powerful sway in the leader of the Klan in Indiana until he ended up kidnapping and raping a girl, and it led to a crazy downfall. But at any rate, you get lost in reading about all kinds of crazy stuff in the parts of the 20th century. But on the left, you can see in the Black Hills of South Dakota, Mount Rushmore, that features the presidents of Washington, Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. And of course, on the right is famously Stone Mountain, again bringing in the KKK. It's the site of the rebirth of the KKK in the midst of Jim Crow in the earliest parts of the 20th century. But it features, of course, the generals from the Confederacy, the president, Jefferson Davis, and then, of course, Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. Stonewall, of course, Thomas Jackson gaining his name from the First Battle of Bull Run. But at any rate, Gutzon Borglum, these monumental statues. On this place in here, where you can find it in South Dakota, right near it is also the unfinished statue of Crazy Horse, the Native American. So most people, when they go and they visit to see Mount Rushmore, they also go and see Crazy Horse. But that's our installment for that 15. Hope you enjoyed watching. It was under 17 minutes. Make sure that you do a good job, commit it to memory, make some flashcards, watch this video again and series of videos, and by doing so, hopefully implant it in your brain. But good luck, good studying, and win.